Hi, welcome to the Prologue. I'm Larry Foss. I'm the head coach at the Fix Studio, and with me is.
I'm Mike Durner from Durner Performance.
And
What are we talking about
today,
today?
oh, today we're going to talk about broken intervals. Mike, you heard of
Okay.
them?
Yeah, I'm a fan of broken intervals.
Huge fan. Huge, huge,
Huge fan.
huge, huge fan.
Yeah. What kind of broken intervals do we have out there?
Well, I think there's two types. There's the planned broken intervals, and then there's the unplanned broken intervals. In my mind, unplanned are planned are fall into the 5x5 thresholds, 30 seconds on, 15 seconds off, 20/40s, all kinds of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. So we're doing a pretty stressful effort, but not having a full recovery between between efforts, basically, is what you're saying. Like those 5x5s usually come with a 1 minute recovery, and the 30 15s or the 40/20s, like they're pretty high intensity. So you're getting just like that recovery feels really short. Um,
Well, not after the first one. They feel kind of luxurious.
yeah, the first couple they feel luxurious. Halfway through, you're like, that it can't be right. Um, but yeah, so we're as the coach, we're planning how these things work out, and we know the benefits of them when we talk about the benefits with athletes. What are we saying?
Like the for the planned ones, like we're talking about, whether it's the one like on a 5x5 threshold interval, I'll do a 1 minute rest. So in the course of 29 minutes, you're getting 25 minutes in threshold. You're doing a 25-minute threshold interval in 29 minutes, but the impact on the recovery for the next day is huge. And it's the same way with the 13. Like I typically do 13 by 30. So at 13 by 30, you're doing 6.5 minutes of threshold work
Hmm.
in a very short period of time, and you're doing three of them. So you're doing 18 minutes of VO2 max work, but you can recover from it much quicker. Because if you went out and tried to do three 6 minute VO2 sessions, the chance of you training the next day with any kind of intensity is virtually zero for most people. They're just not going to be able to recover from that. But they can recover with just those 15-second rest intervals.
Yeah, I agree. And you mentioned the things I tend towards the 40s, but it's the same
Same thing.
concept.
Yep.
And maybe mine had just have a little less because the work periods are longer, but it's still the same. It's like I've got, you know, it's it's they're doing 4 to 6 minutes of work in that time frame, and then we're doing a total of 16 to 20 minutes of work, uh, depending on the athlete and where they're at in the year. But yeah, they feel better the next day. And there's all kinds of little benefits, like the psychological benefit of like, oh, I only have to do 30 or 40 seconds of work versus like 2 to 3 minutes of maximal effort. That seems like a lot for a lot of people I work with.
Mike, how many people do you coach regularly? One of the workouts that I used to do back when I was racing in the early 90s was we would attempt 5x5 VO2 max intervals. I can tell you this, I don't recall ever finishing one of them. I know I never finished one. And I was shot for 2 days afterwards.
Yeah, I'm very much the same way. I have attempted that workout. I don't remember finishing one either. Um, and yeah, it's mentally, and I think this is where the big difference comes in. The mental energy required to focus for a maximal effort for 5 minutes is huge. Like that is, there's so much energy expenditure there that we can't measure with power meters, that your athlete is just crushed for days unless they're a professional. I currently would not even give that to any athlete I'm working with, even if they're at the elite level,
Not anymore.
because I'm worried about the next day and the day after that, and probably 4 days after that.
I think I have given them to some of the professionals I've worked with, and I've had professionals complete them,
Hmm.
but I don't think the risk reward is there. I would get more out of doing 5x3s
Hmm.
than 5x5s.
Yeah, or
And I'm actually getting more work done, and they can recover from it much better. So I think that they work great. Another thing that we talked about beforehand is, man, they're really nice because you don't need the same type of stretch of road.
Mhm.
Whether it's just any stretch of road to get for any kind of threshold intervals, it's hard to get a 20-minute section of road that you can do the whole thing on. 5 minute is pretty easy,
Yeah,
much easier
yeah,
to perform outside.
5 minute or yeah, and just about everybody can find a minute or less stretch of road that they can perform an outdoor effort on, and so that becomes a lot easier working in the higher intensity stuff. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I will say this for the 40/20s or 30/15s,
Mhm.
I actually prefer to do those on a trainer just because I think they're just easier to complete there. But you can do them outside because it's like you said, it's easy to find a section of road to be able to get that in. So there's that. Now the other ones, the unplanned.
The unplanned broken efforts. Yeah, we were talking beforehand. You take a different stance on these than I do. Neither of us think they're a bad thing. We don't chastise athletes for having them in there. We don't yell at athletes, and they're not a negative on the effectiveness of the effort. You tell athletes ahead of time that they're okay. I tell athletes afterwards that they didn't fail.
Right.
So
That's potato, but I get
exactly.
where you're going. And I remember a time when I didn't tell them,
Hmm.
but I got more often than not, I'd get someone just auger themselves into the ground.
Hmm.
And then I had to explain to them that no, it's okay to take a 15 second, typically where I look at those are usually I typically use broken intervals on threshold work.
Hmm.
That's predominantly where I'm going to use that. On my really highly competitive athletes, the national caliber guys, once we get closer to race season, I'll do some 3 minute VO2s
Hmm.
that I give them the okay that you go as long as you can and take, it can be 15 seconds, it can be 4 pedal strokes, there's a million ways you can describe it, but let them know that it's okay to take a short break within the interval
Hmm.
and just continue on. There's no loss, so the stimulus loss is minimal.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think
Uh,
they're great.
so where do we get the benefit, the actual benefit out of these efforts? Like when they're broken, when that 15-second break, like we're saying there's no loss, but there's also a benefit. We talked beforehand and we both agreed. This is the mental side. Like, hey, I'm kind of mean. I call myself mean, but I will give 25-minute efforts depending on where we're at with the athlete, especially athletes doing something like Leadville. Oh, you better be able to be at 95% of threshold for 25 minutes because you're going to do it 3 times. Um, so hey, if you get that little break in there, that just add like, oh, okay, that's all I needed. 15 seconds. Now I can wrap my head around the next 12 and a half minutes or whatever it is, you know?
Yeah. And on the unplanned ones, obviously I'm not programming that into I'll program a 20-25 minute effort.
Hmm.
And I'm not programmed. I don't tell them when to do it. Sometimes they may not. If I tell them to, that once I give them that they know it's okay,
Hmm.
all of a sudden the failure rate goes out the window. Like, because they may not use as many of the rest breaks once they know that, okay, if I do have to rest, it's not going to
Hmm.
be the end of the world. So they don't freak themselves out over it, and they're able to manage it a lot better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
And
the biggest thing is, psychologically, no one's in top shape every day, not with the consistency that you need to train. Yeah, no one goes into every training session going, today's my day.
hmm.
And you just give them that little leeway, and all of a sudden they can start doing some magical things.
Yeah. And I think there's some specific aspects, race specific aspects to it. Like, hey, even here in Colorado Springs, which and Boulder, which have like the maybe some of the most perfect outdoor training venues to go to. Like, we have long climbs that are relatively moderate grade that you can just go and ride up at whatever intensity you need to that day. However, hey, there's a little dip here or there, or there's a corner, and you're gonna speed up or and drop your power just a little bit. That's really specific to that versus like, hey, if you try to hold your power through some of these switchbacks or something, like you might end up blowing up because it's a lot more work in certain spots. And so don't hesitate to have that little break. Give yourself a moment to recover.
I often, when I think about these, I also think about how they manifest in a race situation. And I've been in some breaks that are really, really, really hard, where I've been at or above threshold for a period of time. And almost inevitably, you're going to get an opportunity to to freewheel the bike for a few seconds. And those few seconds often make the difference between you making it and not making it,
Hmm.
sticking in the brake and not sticking in the brake. So it's really hard for me to not acknowledge that in a training situation, because if you come off the gas for just a lot of times it's not 15 seconds, it's like a couple pedal strokes in your back and you're good. Yeah. The point is that not everything looks like you threw a rope.
Right.
Intervals do not have to look like you threw a rope.
Nope. They don't need to look just like that.
They're
Um,
really pretty, but it's not practical, and it's not failure if they don't look like that.
no,
Not at
it's
all.
definitely not.
Awesome. All right, Mike. I guess that's it for today, huh? Broken
Yeah,
intervals.
the broken intervals, that's a wrap. So thanks for joining us on the prologue. We will see you next time.
Bye bye.